Thank you, Rob, and welcome everybody. I welcome you today to our open table where we learn from one another with respect and work to end homelessness in Pierce County. As we respond to the daily trauma of homelessness for those who have no safe place to be in this land we share, we acknowledge our debt to the continuing shepherding of the earth by the native peoples of the Salish Sea, especially the Puyallup tribe of Indians. This morning, I started out feeling disheartened and mostly aware of the grinding constancy and enormity of the problems related to homelessness. I felt stuck in painful images of the growing numbers of people trying to create some type of shelter on our block outside our house on G Street, with tarps or tents draped over or squeezed between the hostile architecture of big boulders. I resented the return of drug dealers with constant buyers, often in late model cars, speeding down our block. And I worried about the intention of the gunshots in the night. This led me quickly to thinking about the whole array of social problems. I can get from zero to nuclear pretty fast. The injustice of sweeps when there's a lack of appropriate shelter, and the new camping bans being put in place that will make things even harder. These kinds of images put me off kilter and certainly not centered, but I couldn't stay in that disheartened place. I thought of all of you as I was trying to think about what to say this morning. And I thought of the heart you have for the human caring and creative actions that you do in this challenging time. I'm remembering Teresa just said a few minutes ago about acting on fumes sometimes. It's just that thinking of you, I thought of the amazing network that we've been growing together. And frankly, it's really a miracle. And I'm not talking about miracles in some supernatural sense, though some of you may have experienced these things. I am thinking about this as an ordinary miracle that can amaze us and keep us going on those fumes or not when we take the time to remember it. So I turned, as I often do, to the poets I cherish to find some words to honor your work and to remind us of the pervasiveness of these kinds of miracles. I thought of the Polish poet and Nobel Prize recipient Wisława Szymborska. She offers her view in a poem titled Miracle Fair and provides us with a list of ordinary miracles. So I'll share it with us today and encourage you to think today on this April 14th spring day of other miracles around you that might amaze you if you remember them and pay attention to them. So here's Miracle Fair, her list. The commonplace miracle that so many common miracles take place. An ordinary miracle, invisible dogs barking in the dead of night. One of many miracles, a small and airy cloud is able to upstage the massive moon. Several miracles in one, an alder tree reflected in the water and is reversed from left to right and grows from crown to root and never hits the bottom though the water isn't deep. A run-of-the-mill miracle, winds mild to moderate turning gusty in storms. A miracle in the first place, cows will be cows. Next but not least, just this cherry orchard with just this cherry pit. A miracle minus top hat and tails, fluttering white doves. A miracle, for what else can you call it? Today the sun rose at 3:14 a.m. and will set tonight at 8:01. A miracle that's lost on us. The hand actually has fewer than 6 fingers, but still it's got more than 4. A miracle, just take a look around. The inescapable earth. An extra miracle, extra and ordinary. The unthinkable can be thought. The unthinkable can be thought. That last line took me right out of my disheartened state, for here we are, thinking the unthinkable thought that we can solve this problem, and committed each in our own way to thinking the unthinkable for as long as it takes. So welcome to the work. So here we are, nice clapping. That's for the unthinkable thoughts that we're going to be having together. We do, at the beginning of these meetings, remind ourselves, and for any new people, just a little bit about the rules of our interaction. And as Zoom has become our accustomed way of being, we ask people to raise hand, use the raise hand motion when you want to be recognized. Rob can keep track of the order of those speakers in. Also to keep ourselves on mute when we're not speaking and to stop our video if we're doing things that might be distracting to others. And what may be different for some of you who are new is that we use the chat really intently and intensively for communication during the meeting. This is a time for networking, a way to network, a way to share your contact information. a way to make announcements, a way to ask questions that might not be able to be asked in the group. And when we do our introductions shortly, if you are new, we ask you just to say your name and if you're associated with a group. But if your group is doing something that would be a useful resource for people working on these issues, Teresa Power Judas will put her contact information in the chat, and you can contact her about possibilities of making a short presentation at a future meeting. So in addition to the Zoom norms, we ask you to look, and I didn't look at the chat, Rob, but I hope you put them there, the Zoom norms and the community norms. We also, since we say at the beginning that we act together with respect for differences, we think about these community norms that we've developed over the time we've been together as a way to have our interactions with each other be with respect for all of us and share the time, because there's now 57 of us here. We want to be sure everyone who wishes to speak has a chance. So I've taken up a lot of space already. So what I'd like to do is invite anyone who's new or returning after some time away to just raise your hand and be recognized and let us know that you're here and what group you may be representing if you are.
Can anyone hear me?
Yes.
We can.
Well, good morning. I
morning,
do
Kelly.
apologize. I was trying to see where I could raise my hand and it's down below, so I wasn't able to find that. But my name is Kelly Cooper. I used to attend these meetings prior to COVID. I'm now returning and I work as a care coordinator in the Health Homes program offered with Molina Healthcare. So good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Kelly, and welcome back.
Well, thanks for all you do. Yes.
So Bethany.
Hi, my name is Bethany. I am the new case manager for the City of Fife Jobs Program.
Well, that's very exciting. Welcome. We look forward to hearing from you. Yes, Katra, sorry.
Sorry, I cannot figure out how to raise the hand on this thing.
That's all right. I saw you, so go ahead.
Okay. All right. So my name's Keitra. I'm from DSHS. I work with the single adult disabled, and this is my second meeting. So I just thought I'd say hi.
I'm glad you did, and I think I got your name right this time, so thank you for coming back.
Keitra.
Yeah.
Keitra.
Okay.
All right, if there's anyone else new who would like to put your name in the chat, if you'd like to be contacted, and if you have specific questions or issues, there will be somebody here, I'm sure, that who's doing something similar and can be in touch. So look forward to talking with all of you. And Rob, it's off to you.
All right. Thank you, Rosemary. And as always, thank you for putting us in the right mindset to start each week's meeting. We're glad you're here. So let's shift to the regular item that we do at the beginning of every week, and that is talking about what people are seeing happening on the streets this week. Among the things that we know are happening is a sweep at the Union Loop in Tacoma. So there's that, but we'd love to get a perspective both inside Tacoma and in unincorporated Pierce County. I see Norman here from Fife. It'd be good to get kind of a county-wide view as much as we can. So just raise your hand if you have something to share about observations and what you're seeing out there on what is still unfortunately cold mornings. We'll get started with Bob. Bob, how are things on the peninsulas?
Good morning. Not good news. We have about 30% increase in those coming to our food banks. Food shortages from the government, from the EFN has also had shortages. Food banks are having to spend about double what they traditionally have spent to get the right kind of food to hand out. About 10 new homeless folks identified this week in both 3 in Gig Harbor, about 7 on the KP. Several of those came over from Bonnie Lake. Not sure it was a caravan, but they do know of each other and they're looking for a quieter place to be where there might be services. We're going to try to help. The most reassuring news and the positive this morning is Jessica Hall is on, and Jessica, you became a new aunt last night as one of our most in need homeless gentlemen staying at the West Wind Motel in Purdy called me this morning to tell me that his mama kitty had 3 kittens last night while he was at the West Wind. And he's asked us to come up with some prospective names because he likes very much what everybody's trying to do to help him. That's all the news I've got. And if anybody wants to send me some names in the chat, happy to listen and read.
Thanks, Bob, and thanks for adding not only humanity, but animal updates. That's great.
Well, and Rob, quickly, the West Wind Motel has become an incredible partner for us. Without their cooperation, discount rates, and willingness to allocate some of their rooms, I think right now there are 6 people staying at the West Wind that have been put there by local and also agencies that have some funding to help. So just a shout out to them. Great partner.
Thanks, Bob. Sally.
So the group in the Mid Hilltop is still about 12 people. And while they got swept last week, they're still there. They're very persistent, partly because they're not very mobile. Both Safeway and CMAR have now closed their bathrooms to unhoused people. So that's created a new set of problems. And a friend of mine who lives out in Spanaway mentioned in another meeting yesterday that she is seeing a lot more tents out in the Spanaway area. So that's an anecdotal report. It would be helpful if maybe somebody from the county or somebody else who lives out there might have more information. Thank you.
Thanks, Sally. And thanks for your ongoing efforts to try to help those folks who are in the Hilltop. Norman?
Hi, everyone. I missed the last couple meetings because let's see. We started our permanent home village. We moved all our pallet homes. So one Friday, I moved all the participants into a hotel. Last Friday, I hired Bethany Montgomery. She introduced herself. So I had a new case manager start. We're going to have a weekend case manager. But let's talk about things. What I'm seeing is course sweeps continuing. We're the same, but the thing we do a little different is when we sweep, and again, we have commerce dollars, we have WashDOT dollars that are clearing stuff out. So I'm working with Brandon and Tricia, who know every single person in the encampment. We're paying for vehicles to get fixed. We're helping with medical issues. We're doing a lot of things right. But the truth of the matter is, if people don't have a place to go, we're not fixing the problem. We're just kind of shuffling the problem around. So hopefully we could be politically correct when we bring that up to the leaders in our cities, because there has to be a task force. Someone has to figure out that just sweeping encampments doesn't solve the problem. We need to do a better job at convincing our leaders that we could take a better approach. As a matter of fact, I wanted to bring up 2 things to the coalition. First of all, maybe we can start Hire 253 again to bring a workforce development approach to start getting people jobs, getting them housed, having them self-sufficient. Another thing, as opposed to yelling at our political figures, let's start some type of voter registration so we could put some teeth behind what we do. So that way, if we don't like what people say, we don't have to ask them to resign. We could literally start a powerful force to make sure people hear us. And the way we're going to do that is voter registration. I missed you guys, by the way.
Thank you, Norman. Thank you for your passion and perspective. And Jay, I see your hand up.
Norman, you're right. Yelling at them isn't really going to do a lot. But what we can do is give them the examples of the situation. What they need is fact. So part of what we need to do is go to council open comment and make comment. What I am seeing is this, and what you're not hearing in your study session is this, because informed decision only happens when they are informed. Unless people have the right information from the bottom, we can't really have true change. So we can bring it here, but we really need to initiate that. Voter registration is wonderful, but we need addresses for our homeless, and we need them to have enough confidence to believe that they can make a difference. Until somebody has confidence, they're not going to vote because they don't believe that anything happens. About 10 years ago, I was riding on the bus and there were people having this conversation about this. Hey, man, I want to do things. I want my life different, but the industry's got me. They're not going to listen to me. I'm at the bottom. I have no power. Those conversations happen all the time. And the way that we change it is by giving those people power, giving them a way to have written testimony. So if you have somebody who's willing to share their story, give them that opportunity at the time it's applicable, which would be council meetings. Sit with a homeless person and ask them to join the conversation during that time. Go to the tiny homes and people that are in the hotel rooms that you've been working with and have them tell their story at that. That would be the most that we can do, not yelling at them, but informing them. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. And Jan.
Yes, concerning outreach, we are now in the planning stages, and I'm pleased to report that many agencies are being involved and want to be involved in planning for inclement weather. That being said, the main way that we're going to reach folks out in the streets and in the woods is through outreach teams. And we don't have everybody at the table yet. Norman Brickhouse, your name was mentioned because you know Fife so well. Todd Gunther, I'm looking at you. You know Ording so well. Richard Berghammer is here today. I saw him show up this morning. Richard is part of an outreach team, I think. Richard, are you still doing outreach on the East Portland Avenue side and on the east side? So we are gathering supplies and we're gathering information and all that and gathering at a table, but we need all of the available outreach teams, both professional and volunteer. So, I mean, we know that Sally is up on the hilltop and she reports in and she sees folks. We need to know every possible outreach team. We're going to work on supplies. St. Vincent de Paul is a great partner. We have New Hope in Puyallup. So if you think that you might be an outreach person, paid or not, get connected with, well, I guess send it to me and I'll get you in the loop, or send it to Jeff Rogers, or send it anybody, Rob Huff, any of us can make sure that you're included in the loop. We're planning primarily for summer right now, but that isn't, summer could happen in 45 minutes, the way that climate change is happening right now. So stay connected, please, especially in the environment of sweeps. It used to be easier to find folks and to help folks and give them blankets and water. It is getting near impossible. Thank you.
Also,
Jan.
please use the listserv. Like we are relying on that listserv, and that will get to everybody who needs to hear or see anything. And it gives us that documentation, please.
And we will talk about the inclement weather planning in a couple of segments coming right up. So that's a great preview of where we're going this morning. I did want to carve out an opportunity. Jessica, anything you wanted to share about what you're seeing outside Tacoma's boundaries? Anything new?
I just have the same thing to say as I did last week, which is that the Tacoma sweeps are just like really pushing people out. And I'm not sure who all is aware, but Lakewood's also passed a camping ban. And so people are gathering in much larger groups in places because all of the little camps are being dismantled. So it's creating more of a problem than it was before, in my opinion. But I mean, maybe that's just me. And then, you know, the Key Peninsula and Gig Harbor area is getting more people over there. People are sick of the city side. I'm getting a lot of, yes, I was in Tacoma or I was in Spanaway, but the crime, my stuff was getting stolen by other homeless people, so on and so forth. So we came out here because it's more rural and it's quiet and there's less people up your butt, so to speak. So that's, not helpful because there is no transportation out there. It's very difficult to get people services on the other side of the bridge, as you guys know. So that's pretty much what I'm seeing. I also did hear that there's more people up at Sprinker. I have not been up there, but our team is going up there today. So that's where we're at.
Thanks, Jessica, and thanks for providing some perspective of what's happening outside the city. I always worry a little bit about us saying that the city of Tacoma's camping ban is pushing people outside the city, even if it's reality, because I'm afraid some of the elected officials probably would be pretty gleeful to hear about that. But it's the reality of what we're facing. So we're talking reality here this morning.
And and then I don't know who's on the call, but then, they'll fight amongst each other because Lakewood will get upset that people from Tacoma are coming and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Yep.
I wanted to say one more thing though. We went to a round table in Gig Harbor on Wednesday and it went really well. And honestly, like, to kind of speak to what Jay was saying, it's so much more helpful to give them real-time examples. People were shocked at what I had to say and what we had to say, the panel. And I think that that people are very far away from the reality of what it's like down here.
Yeah, thank you, Jessica. All right. So any final items for the On the Street segment that folks want to share? Yeah, go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I was at the sweep on Madison earlier in the week, but I do want to bring some good news. And Lehigh is building a 5-story low income, I think it's 40% AMI, at 38th and G Street. The old building is coming down, the new building is going up, and Lehigh owns it, and they are building. This will take probably, I think they're saying the end of 24, it will be open, but I don't know how long all that'll take place. But it is good news because there is low income housing coming to Tacoma. Slowly, but it is coming. So I wanted to share some good news.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Let's close out this segment with that. We take our good news when we can get it. And actually, our next segment is also going to be about good news. So, Adam, would you like to share about the inclement weather funding opportunity from the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. I'm Adam Reichenberger. I prefer he, him pronouns. I'm the Housing Policy Coordinator at Tacoma Pierce County Health Department. Good to see you all again. And thank you for giving me a moment to just kind of explain the email I sent out last week with very little context. So I'll try to keep it brief, just so folks who have questions can get them to me. And if I don't have time to answer everyone's questions and there's more outstanding, I'll put together an email and send answers out to everybody too, so everybody has those answers. But basically, the health department is piloting a new funding opportunity for inclement weather response. The primary purpose is to provide funding to organizations to support the health and well-being of folks experiencing homelessness during extreme heat, wildfire smoke, and extreme cold. All of those. And our aim here is to make this funding as flexible as possible and not necessarily to prescribe what organizations should be doing. Instead, if you're awarded these funds, we're asking you to use some of that funding to plan ahead, develop a plan of action for these events. Because simply put, as Jan just said a moment ago, summer can happen anytime. So that's kind of the situation we're in now. So kind of using some of this funding to develop a plan. And then we want to fund you to implement that plan when the time comes. So if you've looked at the request for proposals that I sent out last week, I think last week, could have been 2 weeks ago. The time's kind of a blur these days. We're being intentionally vague with the pilot. That's on purpose. We want folks to plan ahead, We want you to implement that plan, and then we want you to report back to us after the fact. We want to be able to use that report out to continue to improve and hopefully grow on this program for future years. But we really want to use this opportunity to fund you to lean into your own expertise to kind of develop that plan, trust you to implement it, and fund you to do so. When applying for the funding, you'll also notice there isn't a formal questionnaire. There's not a formal link on our website. And so what we're asking for in the application is simply write up a brief proposal based on the scoring rubric that you'll see in that RFP. There's 4 categories, I think. It's basically, what your organization would do with the funding, how would you develop your action plan, what your organization's understanding and perspective of racial equity and intersectionality with this community is, and how that's reflected in your own staffing, and then your organization's capacity to do the work and how much funding you would need to do it. It's a limited amount of funding. This first pilot, the total amount's $25,000. We're hoping to fund between, it can all go to one organization if that's how it shakes out, but 1 to 3 is kind of what we have in mind. And as a reminder, just the deadline is next Friday to send proposals to me, and I will put my email address in the chat here so folks have it, and I can also resend the RFP to the listserv as well. So folks
Great,
have any
thank you.
questions, I can try to answer them on the spot, or I can just collect questions and send out answers afterwards.
Well, it does look like we have a couple of questions on the spot. Nicholas, do you want to start us off?
I don't have a question. I have something like afterwards.
Oh, okay. We'll come right to you once we get through this segment. I did see Teresa put in the chat, can the funding be used for warming and cooling buses and vans?
Sure.
That's a short answer.
It's only 25,000. So if you're talking about buying a bus or van, that's probably not reasonable. But if you already have plans in place, and this could support that.
Well, it might be something that Pierce Transit has done some things before. So if there was an organization who took it on and coordinated with Pierce Transit, I think something really good could happen.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us would recognize that as much more logical than trying to get people to leave their camps.
Yeah, and I love that idea. When we talk here in a moment about the hot weather planning meeting that took place earlier in the week, one of the things that some other communities have done is taken resources out to people rather than requiring them to come to those resources. And that's the kind of innovation that might change the numbers of people being able to actually access some cooling in particular, but also heating in the winter. Jay.
Really odd sideline here, sorry. But so Pierce Transit itself is having a problem with finding enough drivers. For our outreach people, if you find people with CDL or driving experience, that might be your opportunity to connect them to a really good paying job if they are at the point where they just started their homelessness and can recoup quickly, or if they're in transitional housing or tiny housing. So just a thought for everybody, because Pierce Transit can't do anything unless they get enough drivers to do those things. So we really need to help them. And this might be an opportunity to kind of merge the two. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay. Any others with questions for Adam right now? Yeah, Keitra.
Sorry, having technical difficulties here. I have a question. I don't think it's related to the conversation, but I kind of had a question about the sweeps. So are they a good thing? Are they a bad thing? Do you guys help with the sweeps? Is it, no, we don't like the sweeps? Okay. And so I'm sorry, I don't quite understand. So you guys go to them. And you
we go there
offer
largely to help folks and to witness. And a number of folks who are part of the coalition have developed relationships with people who are, in particular, say at the Union Loop, to try to help build some trust and relationships and be able to connect people then to resources that might exist in the community, shelter opportunities one by one as they come up. But yeah, the sweeps are counter. They don't really accomplish much because folks don't have anywhere to go.
Oh, I see.
So it just moves an encampment to other parts of the community.
So do you guys need to help with people to go out there and help them, or?
There's certainly a group of folks who do that. And if you put your name in the chat, maybe somebody can connect with you and talk about some of those opportunities.
Okay. All right. Sorry about the interruption. Okay.
No problem at all. Patricia.
I'm going to say one thing about what the topic we were on about, like weather sheltering and stuff, that a couple things. Don't hoard the supplies, make sure that they're available when it's needed, and also going to people, because even though usually like Pierce Transit will allow you to go, people don't move. They sort of stay in place when it gets too hot or certain things because they can't. Diverting a little bit to Jay Worley's comments and a comment made, I think, by Norm. I just wanted to speak in regards to working on the ground. When you're on the ground, is that there's been when things happen, I guess with identification, it's been where they've moved you into surrendering your driver's license and going just for identification. And that limits opportunities for those on the ground when you don't have a driver's license to move into different work situations. And even though there's like subsidized identifications, the driver's license are $81. And when you do surrender that, you have to start the whole process over again, which becomes quite costly. And then it also limits, you know, your work when you only have an ID. I just wanted to say that to providers because it does become situational about changing somebody's trajectory. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia, and always appreciate your perspective. So Adam, thank you for bringing the broader overview of this opportunity to us this morning. And if you could resend the RFP to the mailing list, I think that'd be good, just letting folks know that next week's the deadline.
Will do. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. And Nicholas, do you want to bring up the topic you had said that you had something else you wanted to bring up?
Yes, sir. I'm Nicholas Turner, the Catholic Community Services Safe Parking Supervisor for the site at Holy Rosary. And Alan Brown, my director, wanted everybody in the coalition to know that we'll be starting the site on Monday. So we'll be starting up Monday at 8 o'clock. And really excited. I will put all my information in the chat if you need to get a hold of me and whatever we need to do. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
Thank you, Nicholas. We're glad to have to hear that this resource is going to be available in Tacoma and added to the list of other safe parking sites across the county.
Absolutely. I'm glad to be a part of it.
All right. So with that good news, let's shift over to do a brief overview of the hot weather planning get together that took place earlier this week. So on Wednesday morning, the folks from Pierce County Human Services and the Pierce County Department of Emergency Management hosted a number of us at the Emergency Operations Center off South 35th here in Tacoma. And part of that meeting was to do a walkthrough of documentation that the county has created that will set expectations in terms of thresholds when different like cold and hot weather thresholds, when different emergency responses would begin, and also setting thresholds around smoke and bad air warnings, and when different kinds of resources like clean air centers may open during that time. This document, it sounds like Delmar, from what he shared at the meeting, said that he would be, after the meeting, sharing it with Pierce County's communications folks, at which point they will put it on the website. So we don't actually have the document to show you right now, but it will be on the Pierce County website soonish. I'll offer a couple of thoughts about takeaways from the conversation, and then I'd be happy to open the floor for others who are in the conversation to see if there's additional things to share. One of the key things that I think we've learned over the last couple of years of doing inclement weather response is that, unfortunately, bad weather and smoke and things like that do not work on a weekday schedule. And so one of the challenges is that many of the contracted outreach teams don't typically have service that they provide on weekends and on holidays. And so that is a challenge that looks like it's going to remain for the next year. Delmar shared that the county just put out it went through its most recent grant cycle with the nonprofits that do outreach that are paid for by the county. And the latest round of contracting did not include provisions about staffing over the weekends or on holidays. So that's an ongoing shortcoming that we need to deal with. In addition, there was conversation about the ongoing challenges that we run into every year, every season, around both transportation and the need for having provisions for people's belongings. Because what we recognize is people, we've talked about it this morning. It's really hard for people to leave a site where they have all their belongings to access either a cold weather, a warming center or a cooling center, because people don't want to lose their things, which makes a lot of sense. And so that's where I brought up earlier in the conversation when Adam was talking about bringing things like heating and cooling to people rather than requiring them to come to a site. That's a constant conversation. So that's still both of those things are still ongoing challenges. I do think that there was a lot of thankfulness in the room from those who are in the gathering that we are having the conversation in April about hot weather, that we're not doing it on August 1st with hot weather coming on August 3rd, like so often happens. So I think there's a recognition that there is more planning taking place and that that's good for all of the people in our community. But we still know that there's more to do. And so that would be kind of my brief overview. But we were in that meeting. Kenneth was there, Jay was there, Jan was there. There were a lot of us there. There were folks from the city there, Caleb and Matthew. Jeff Rogers, I know was in the room earlier today. I think Jeff's still here. He was there from the county. So it was a pretty, robust group of folks who were there, folks from the health department. Some outreach folks from Comprehensive Life Resources were there. So let me stop yammering and see if either Jan or Jay have other things that they would like to share about the content of the meeting and how you feel we're set up going into the hot weather. Jan?
It was thrilling to see how far we've come along as far as a community that plans for the inevitable. But getting back to Rob's point about the county offering contracts, and so the recognized contracted providers can work with their contract of management people with the county as far as offering something during inclement weather on a pre-approved expense for which they will be reimbursed. That comes at the expense of their regular operations and their regular programs. Just because the county will agree to pay for a semi full of bottled water, that comes at the expense of that nonprofit's ability to do their regular service the rest of the year. It is not a solution. It might save a soul in the middle of the night when it's 100 degrees outside during the day, but what about the 20 souls that are going to be lost because the program now is at risk? So that's something that has to be addressed. And perhaps those of you who are creative, think about this $25,000. If that could just be helpful for things like hotel vouchers or supplies or transportation or whatever, to preserve our already fragile system of services that we provide. So it'd be mainly as acting like a reimbursement for our folks that are already doing the things, but they need a little bit more help to get through a bad weather situation. So that is one thing. I'll defer to Jay.
Yeah, go ahead, Jay.
The last 6 months, last year, we've made incredible strides in communicating and working together. The thing we've been missing for the last 2 months or so is we started this inclement weather cycle doing well. We all gathered at the table. We all got into a rhythm, and then we started going to the meetings because we were in a rhythm, and we got dependent on data sheets, and we got dependent on inclement weather, and we all got really good about cross communication. But because that, we stopped getting to the meetings where Pierce County and Tacoma can actually hear us. So moving forward, it'd be great if we can get that communication from our different municipalities, such as Puyallup in particular, would be really great to hear from. If we could work with them. Norman, you and Peter Fisher, a couple of other people would be really fantastic to have on there for Pike, and other people that you think needs to come forward, or other people in that area that come forward, because there is a lot of progress there that everybody could learn some things from. But it's really vital that Pierce hears firsthand from all of us, just like it's really vital for the council, because it's that informed part. They can't be informed if we don't talk to them. And the more people at the table, the more we can join together our resources as well. And that's kind of pivotal. Right now with the resources, it is literally you can't use this item if it is funded from Pierce until 32. You cannot use these items if it's funded from this location at this temperature. They're different temperatures at different places, and it causes a bit of problems. The way to offhand that is plan in advance for donations, getting our donation cycles and requests out like a month earlier, realizing that every spring and every fall are going to be way harsher than they used to be, and that those are shock days for about 2 months. This year it was November and December for winter overtime, and then it was the last 2 months had really lows at night and up to 60 during the day. So drastic temperatures are something that aren't accounted for this, and what we need to, and offhand them with donation if at all possible, and plan around it with what we've learned in the last year with that community effort of outreach. We want to hear you. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay. And Kenneth, did you want to share anything from that meeting?
Always. I've had to jump up and down because it's a very busy morning in my office building today, so I'm not exactly sure what details you all have been over, but some of the bonuses that we saw in the meeting were that the county is actually releasing a full report with their approved actual threshold and their roles identified, which is a big, huge new thing. So
yeah. And I didn't Jay may have taken a screenshot of what thresholds they put on screen. I did not, but from the top of my memory, what I can recall is if there's a forecast for 1 inch or more of snow, then there's an opening of services and resources.
So it's I'm sorry, it's the same as we saw last year, but it's more official now, so that we can actually say, hey, this is what it is. It's 32 degrees, 1 inch of snow, 35 with wind chill for Tacoma itself. The county is saying that above 32 to 35 if there's like freezing rain. Also, they're adding in air quality. and 2 days of 90 degrees or more. Yep, Rob's hitting him up as fast as I put him down. And yeah, so we are going to see that. Right now, what I asked for in that meeting was that we had more coordination on that, since we heard a lot of people were like, oh yeah, 32 degrees. And we were like, yeah, but it's 16 degrees and nobody's responding. So we're looking for a trigger point that everybody can look at the same time. And they were talking about, what was the warn app?
PC Warn.
Yeah, PC Warn is going to be what they're going to all look at the same time.
Great. All right. Thank you, Kenneth. And Patricia, I see your hand is up.
I just want to talk from a lived experience perspective as you provide services and see the upcoming sometimes changes to inform those living on the ground. Normally the scope is a day-to-day situation, and not understanding sort of how the effects of weather affects on the body, and particularly moving around with a pack and all your things or whatnot. To really understand what's happening. So just to be a reminding of those folks that do move around and what they can do when they are instead of in a temperature crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. And Mark. And you're muted right now, Mark.
Have you folks looked at what communities in California, Central California, Sacramento, Arizona have done in terms of responses where it's frequently over 100, 110 during the summer, and kind of maybe replicating what they've been doing if it's seems like a good fit?
Yeah, as individuals we have, and I do know that the county, in pulling together their thresholds, they didn't divulge the exact sources that were used, but there was research done to try to come up with what seemed to be appropriate thresholds. The challenge is going to be creating solutions similar to what's been done in some of those hotter areas in particular, like mist tents and things like that have tended to be done like as a last ditch emergency response here rather than a routine thing. So so yeah, there's definitely more lessons to be learned from other places where heat's more frequent in particular.
Right. Yep. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. And then Kenneth and Jay, and we'll close out this section since we're getting long-winded.
By the way,
We do have to look at like Rob was just saying, the mist tents and the sprinkler systems did come up, and I know that we saw that a lot in Arizona. We are going to hit the roadblock of people saying talking about acclimation. Like, it's easier for folks in Arizona to deal with higher temperatures, so we can't use the same thresholds here. Plus, we have more drastic back and forth where, we've got, like Jay was saying the other day, we've got 60-degree afternoons and then 16-degree evenings. And so our offices, all the official offices close at like 5 o'clock. And so they're not going to respond to what happens at nighttime in that drastic day and night shift.
Thanks, Kenneth. And Jay, go ahead and close us out.
One of the things that I've been pushing is using sun covers with solar fans so that we're not using power outlets, and having volunteer groups who are willing to, because at this point we can't push for these kinds of actions until we've exhausted all prior actions. And that's something else that's really important to understand, is this is kind of like a phase thing. We start with phase one, which is we see it coming, so we try to get some stuff out that's donated material. Phase two is it's really coming, so we're gonna do our best to get out what we can that is donated material that we know they will need, and we are asking for more with the plans of only taking it out at temperature request. And then the next phase being like active incidents, middle of it, able to use our funds from then out, able to use anything that we bought with those funds. So at that point, we are already gone through most of our donation. We're hitting those fund points, but it's not enough money. and we are exhausting everything that we have, and then we still have 2 months of the inclement weather coming up, plus a hot day, cold night cycle for 2 months. So really pivotal that we look at those things and plan for after that threshold when we've exhausted everything else. Then we can start using things like community effort with fans and covers and mist tents. Because if you have a solar fan and a mist tent, you're creating that cold bubble that everybody needs without a lot of effort. But mist may not be the best opportunity. We have a very humid environment that kind of sucks mist up. So the best thing is like cold towels, constantly dipped fabrics, using sheets and keeping them in cold areas. Also trying to find like solar panels and hook them up to ice makers at locations, because that has been a complaint. Using concepts like that, let's break the mold and see what we can do at the end of those cycles so that we can really fix the problem. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Jay, and thank you everyone for your time and efforts over the winter season to help keep people safe and get them through the cold weather. And I know we're going into summer with a much better opportunity to have a more systematic approach and less of a knee-jerk emergency response. So appreciate everybody's energy on this, and there's going to be more to do and more conversation ahead. I do promise as soon as the county lets us know that the threshold document has been posted, we'll share that to the listserv. And one last thing is I've put this in the chat a couple of times, but if you're interested in helping respond to inclement weather and tracking this issue, please go to the pchomeless.org website and sign up for the inclement weather mailing list there. So, and Timothy, that's a great idea. We did talk about that, and in fact, some of the government folks said that ice makers at some of the sites like FOB Hope might make a lot of sense.
It's a really cool idea.
Yeah.
Are we ready?
We are. Yeah. Let's shift over to you to a review from last week's conversation.
Flawless segue. Let me stick my notes over in the thing. There we go. And you're going to pop yours up?
I am. There you go.
Okay. So we start off, as always, with the reminder of our inspiration. And I noticed that last week's poem reads exceptionally well after this morning's poem on ordinary miracles. So feel free to reread that. Woot to Mr. Sugar Ray Seals, who joined us at the beginning of last week's meeting. I do want to note that I went to his GoFundMe page a few minutes ago, and we are still about $2,000 away from his GoFundMe page goal of $10,000. And if you want to look down in the notes and resources section, there's a little article on him and also a link to the GoFundMe page if anyone wants to post that and help him get to his goal. Last week we talked about what we would like to see on the Pierce County website in terms of a dashboard around homelessness. A lot of stuff came up. We first talked, I first listed just the feedback about the website itself, which can be summarized as it needs more contextualization. There's just a lot of data there without explanation, really, and it doesn't tell a story. It's hard to really pull what they're trying to convey out of that. So, don't shoot the messenger, Pierce County, but your information kind of sucks in terms of trying to make meaning of it. And you can work on that. Things that people would like to see, clear user-friendly data. There was EMS calls by those who were homeless. That might be something to look at. Just another reminder that 211 isn't so great. Really interesting idea if somebody wanted to take on a big project of doing sort of the employment stats on service providers. I'm sure that would be a revealing exercise. And then there was sort of a litany of how many's. How many people identified in the last counts, how many shelter beds are there, how many houses versus how many homeless are coping with severe mental illness, how many are in the queue, things like that, sort of calls to count things. There was some feedback on HMIS that was both intriguing and unflattering about it preventing the sharing of data that will help people, and that it presents barriers that actually presents serving people. We could probably have a whole spotlight on HMIS at some time. And then there were some intriguing ideas around housing and rental supply and demand, and showing that in an ongoing way. And that's about it. As always, if you put links about stuff in the chat, I will make sure it gets into here. Press, fundraisers, job openings, information that would be helpful to people, anything like that, stick it in the chat and it'll show up at the end of this report. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Timothy. Yeah, some good things brought up there. And I will mention in terms of data, and I hope I'm not stealing Jeff Rogers' thunder, but we will soon see the report from the point in time count from earlier this year. So some additional fresher data will be available through that. Let's see. So I'm going to reshuffle our agenda a little bit. And in the interest of trying to, well, let's see, let's go ahead and spend 5 minutes doing a follow-up on the discussion last week from regarding creative responses to sweeps. And so Dana, I'll hand it over to you, and we've got about 5 minutes.
Yep, that will do it. Thanks, Rob. So hi, everybody. If I assessed the chat correctly, there are 12 of us that expressed interest in some creative actions, and actions in addition to all that is already being done. You know, this is such a big issue. The harm of sweeps and the need for housing, right, is huge. So anything that we can do to increase the visibility of the harm of sweeps and the need for more housing, kind of, I think is what this group is trying to do, is increase that visibility. So our first step and what we're working on now is just the logistics of coordination. You know, how we get together, what's the best way going to be to do that, as well as then prioritizing. There, in addition to the breakout summary ideas that we have, there were 5 ideas specifically noted in the chat last week. Kind of generalizing that, well, the 5, there was, you know, art was a popular one, and writing, just for example, was a popular one. So we'll move forward to keep coordinating, prioritizing. I will keep the coalition informed as to what's happening. So you'll all know of opportunities to participate. This is something, at least in my mind, that you can jump in at any time. You can jump out of at any time. Everything and everyone is welcome. If I missed anyone who expressed interest last week, please let me know. If there's any questions, please let me know. I'm kind of see my role as coordinating all the ideas and leadership that we will have in the group. So I will put my email in the chat so you can reach out to me. If there's any questions now that I or any of the others can answer, I'm happy to do so.
Great, thank you, Dana, for taking up the baton and running this leg of the relay in this particular item.
Yes, of course.
I'm going to keep using the track metaphors, and it's going to get really annoying. So let's shift over to our regular government updates, and we will actually hold our breakout conversation after that. So, first up, do we have anybody on the call from the city of Tacoma that would like to offer updates? Hi, Matthew.
Good morning, everyone. Matthew Jorgensen with the City of Tacoma Neighborhood and Community Services Department. I just want to echo that we had that really good meeting with Pierce County about the upcoming inclement weather this summer. It's nice that we're having that meeting in April as opposed to August. But we are currently working on like replenishing our water at the stability site for distribution this summer. Hopefully the hot weather doesn't show up in May like it does some years. Last year we went through 40,000 bottles of water. And so we're looking for also some additional, if anyone has ideas on more sustainable options, we're looking at boxed water, canned water, gallon jugs, that kind of thing, that aren't super cost prohibitive. Just a more efficient way to get water to folks. But that's something we're working on. And just as a quick reminder, since the thresholds are pretty different with jurisdictions. So for water distribution for the city of Tacoma, once it hits 85 degrees, then we'll be able to start distributing water through the city. I know there is a conversation about when that water can be picked up. Is it before the heat event? Is it while the heat event's going on? So we can definitely iron out those details. But yeah, getting prepared for the hot weather as soon as that shows up. And then additionally, as Nicholas shared, good news about safe parking opening on Monday. We're very excited about that. I guess they've already got a little wait list from the HEAL team for referrals, but we're excited to have that site come online next week. And there were the 2 encampment removals this week, and I'm not at North Levy Road and at obviously Union Loop. And so for North Levy Road, they were able to the HEAL team was able to contact 21 people, and 19 of those folks either accepted or they're interested in services. And then at Union Loop, it was 15 folks that were contacted, and 11 were accepting services or interested, and then 2 were placed actually into housing. So that's a pretty good rate of folks that are interested in services, which that's a testament to the relationships that people have built with the folks there, and folks, asking for the help that hopefully we're able to provide. And I'm not aware right now of any other major encampment cleanups that are scheduled, but I am happy to take any questions online or offline. So just let me know.
Yeah, real quick, Matthew, the terminology accepted services is really tough. It's helpful to hear the number of folks who moved into housing, but can you give another kind of quick explainer on what accepted services means?
Yeah, I know we've kind of evolved over the years. I think I actually started on the hot team 6 years ago, and it was, how many people accepted shelter? And that was the only metric that we were tracking at the time. And now it's a little more comprehensive in the sense of this, this person is interested in treatment, this person is interested in, any other linkage services. And so it's the idea of there's the whole spectrum of services and what are folks interested in. And ideally it'd be, we'd be able to house everyone at one of these sites. I mean, that's exciting about 2 people getting housed. So there is a wide spectrum of what it means when folks accept services or are interested in it. Because each individual is so different. We're working with people and people are complicated. So that's kind of, it's the wider range. It's not just that simple, how many into shelter, which we track that as well, but we also want to track how many folks are interested in the services if they're offered.
Yeah, one suggestion that I would share, just because that term is so hard to understand what that means, would be like if accepted services means just people took a flyer from a particular organization. It'd be helpful to know if it was like, is it actual referrals? Is it, X number sought treatment? It because it's such a global term that it just makes it in some ways harder to know what's going on. Okay, let's get to some others. I know Patricia, thank you for your patience. Your hand's up.
Just with the hydration factor, I've worked a lot in that. I don't think plastic bottles are the best for a variety of reasons, particularly in temperature control. When it's heat, you can taste the plastic. I've done different things in like tent encampments with those big like bubblers and just like a wooden stand so that they have access to water to fill up their own water bottles. Also opening up water opportunities with like maybe a truck that has potable water to be able to fill up and go around at different sites on a regular schedule, I think is important. When people know that that is accessible and consistent, folks on the ground gravitate toward that. So thank you for letting me share.
Thank you, Patricia. Jan.
Quick question to Matthew. Previously, the stability site was the only place that outreach teams could go access, pick up water or other supplies to do outreach to encampments. Could you run this up the flagpole and see if Holy Rosary could be a staging site instead of, or perhaps in addition to stability site? Because, you know, for those of us who've driven to stability site, parking is a nightmare and you can only go one way, and it's challenging. And you've got the same provider, you've got CCS at both places. So if we could go to Holy Rosary instead of, or in addition to stability site for when a trigger has been reached for responding to inclement weather. Thanks.
Thanks, Jan. I'll definitely follow up on that. It's a great idea.
And Mark. And you're muted again, Mark, just so you know.
Sorry. I know there's been a lot of press in the past couple weeks about co-leads, just what's called Just Care outreach group. Is Just Care working with the city of Tacoma at all, or is that something to look? I know it's already ongoing, but is that something to kind of replicate some of their efforts that have proven to be, you know, initially somewhat successful?
I'm not super up to speed on Just Care, but I can definitely follow up on that.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and to my knowledge, Mark, Just Care is a Seattle and King County centric organization currently.
Yeah, right.
And the model that they're using is very similar to what's being done through the right-of-way cleanup program in 5 counties across the state.
Right.
So where it's prioritizing moving people into either not moving people out of a site until they have identified a place for them to go. So essentially into shelter, into some sort of temporary housing like tiny or micro shelters, or actual housing. And I think the big barrier is frequently cost and the time that it takes to go through the program, but the outcomes are so much better. So yeah, it is being done here in Pierce County through the right-of-way program with Comprehensive Life. And in fact, Lehigh has talked to us about the what they're calling the Maureen Howard Place, the former Canterwood Suites in Lakewood, where folks are being moved out of rights of way into that eventually, as the step out of those right-of-way sites. Excellent. So yeah, it's a model that definitely works. It just takes a lot of funding and commitment.
And time and coordination. Right.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Matthew. And if other folks have questions, please do drop those in the chat. I'm sure Matthew can hang around for a few minutes. Let's shift over to Jeff Rogers from the department, or from Pierce County Human Services. Jeff, are you still here?
I am here. Good morning. I just have a couple of things to share. The first one being that our largest funding opportunity that we have, that you kind of mentioned earlier, Rob, has closed, and we received 48 applications. That is quite a bit of applications, and different projects have applied for our funding. Just to put it into perspective, those applications asked for $27 million. We have just under $6 million to provide. So you can imagine how tough it's going to be to identify of those 48 projects who gets funded and how much, when there's $6 million to provide with a $27 million need. Those awards should be announced sometime in May, late May is the goal. So if you applied, be patient. We will be announcing those awards hopefully in late May. The second thing I wanted to share is that we'll be releasing what we're calling a Shelter Access Hub funding opportunity. This funding opportunity was released recently, several months ago. The response wasn't as positive as we expected. No provider was identified, so we're re-releasing this funding opportunity. And what we mean by Shelter Access Hub is a facility, depending on how the agency wants to design it, that provides shelter. It should be a 24/7 access. It's intended to be used by hospitals, police, fire, social service agencies. Walk-ups will be able to come in, and the goal would be to provide a temporary bed for folks until they can get into a more permanent established shelter. So it is to help with respite from hospitals and respite from the streets, and working with police departments, fire departments with 7 days a week, 365 days a year, 24-hour access. It will be 30 beds. So hopefully as people need the beds, they'll be available. So that should be released within the next several weeks as well. And those are the two key things I wanted to share today.
Thank you, Jeff. And then I did mention the point in time count being released. You said toward the end of this month?
We're trying to get it out as soon as possible. We have the data. We have to report it to HUD by the end of the month, but our hope is that we can share it with the community prior to that. We have to fill it into a database at a federal level and make sure everything adds up and computes and calculates, and then we can release it. So hopefully we'll be able to submit it to HUD early. The goal is next week, and hopefully release the numbers next week. It's ready. We just need the green light to publish it.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. Let's see. So let's shift over to folks from the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department. There's Jenny.
Morning. Hi, good morning, everybody. This is Jenny Sheppy, Health Promotion Coordinator and Liaison at Tacoma Pierce County Health Department in Communicable Disease. I'm happy to be with you as always. Our Gov Delivery newsletter went out on Monday. We're doing those monthly now, collection of updates from across all of our divisions or across the department. If you are not getting that monthly newsletter and you would like to, please put a note in the chat and I can add you to that. It's full of great information, and then you can refer back to the summaries that we share. In that message this week, there were a couple things I wanted to just bring your attention to. One is that we've updated a flyer that shows where folks can get free vaccines, adult vaccines across the county. That's not just COVID, that's flu, hepatitis, all those other vaccines. And so I will share the link to the flyer in the chat. And also want to remind folks that we have 9 family resource centers across the county. And those resource centers serve everyone in the community, including veterans, seniors, unhoused youth, families. We have diaper banks there. We have sort of small food pantries there. The staff there can do basic food enrollment, sign families up for different resources we have at the department, like parenting classes, and then there's some other additional resource navigation support. So I will share a link to our family resource centers as well. We got a small grant from DOH to offer portable air purifiers to several of our shelter sites. So I will be working on that in the coming months. The grant was around COVID mitigation, but I think that with the weather coming and wildfire smoke and all of that, it will be really a great addition to our shelter system. I'm also working with the cross-divisional team members and with our communications team to create a landing webpage for homeless service providers. You may have heard me mention this before, but this is part of a larger effort that the department's making to sunset or subsume some of our, that was a lot of S's, our COVID-19 pages into more general, away from COVID specific information to more general space. So we would really like, we're envisioning this space as a place where folks like you who are serving our unhoused neighbors could come and find all the resources that the department has to offer in one place. And I am hoping to get 2 to 3 volunteers from this group to test that page for me, to help me kind of thought partner and test the page out once it is fully drafted. Should be in the next month, hopefully a couple weeks. I'm anticipating it might take a couple hours of your time. So I would really appreciate it. And if anybody here is willing to help out with that and give me some input and feedback, I would really appreciate it. Any questions for me?
Looks like you have some volunteers in the chat.
Oh, awesome. Thanks, guys. Well, if I get too many volunteers, I'll just have to draw your names out of that. Thank you so much. I want this to, we really, want this to be obviously user-friendly and have a good interface. So that is where your input will really come in and help us make it a great resource. So thanks so much. I don't know if Isaiah has anything to add today, but I will be here. I can answer questions in the chat, and you can always reach out to me via email. Thanks, Rob. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
Hello. Yeah, so I am Isaiah. I am also a health promotion coordinator, similar to Jenny. Some people might call me Jenny's sidekick. We're more like partners, but I would love to be her sidekick, honestly. I have a few updates. So one of them is that I also attended the debrief that happened. Yes, we're absolutely partners. This debrief that happened earlier this week. And we had some discussion around communications, specifically around some of the heat infographics and the heat information that TPCHD can distribute. For those of you that are on the inclement weather listserv here, I sent out a 2-pager, which basically just walks through like some general tips and tricks around heat exhaustion, heat cramps, and heat strokes, specific folks who are experiencing homelessness, some simple tactics people can use in order to kind of identify the signs and also to mitigate any harm caused by those things. And on the second page, there is a list of water fountains located all around Pierce County. Also, during the discussion, people brought up the idea of maybe having 211, the 211 number on some of the heat infographics, or just having a number in general to call if you're a person experiencing homelessness yourself, or if you're a provider and you want to have someone to talk to when it comes to extreme heat, right? So if someone's experiencing heat cramps, heat stroke, you want to call someone up and say, hey, what can I do to get some support? What can I do to get some help? So I want to open up the space here too. If anyone had any thoughts or ideas they wanted to send my way about like what they would want to see in terms of communication and what might be helpful for them in the coming months to prepare, especially as TPCHD starts gearing up to start sending out our Keep Cool webpage and some of our posters and cards that you see, which talk more about heat. So that's one update that I want to share. And actually, Patricia has her hand up.
I am going to speak about the 211 reference. When you get on the phone, how long you got to wait to get a reference. But I think that maybe a prompt immediately, if you're like seeking cooling shelter or water, this is where you go, and also have it directly on most of the websites as a click link, I think would be very important. As well as public space, like the public libraries, and where a lot of people congregate during these weather things, as well as food banks and food meal places. Thank you for letting me share.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We talked about having links. So a lot of our messaging already has some links. And I think that also includes some of the information that's on the PC Coalition webpage. But it was discussed it'd be great to have a place where someone could like call, and 211 obviously isn't great, Patricia, but a lot of folks don't have access to internet. So a link might not always be helpful. But that's something for me to keep in mind. So thanks for sharing that.
That's what I was saying, like when you call 211, it takes so long, but if maybe that could be the front facing during those weather things, the front facing message to get that information as ASAP. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Thank you, Isaiah.
Yeah, and I do have another quick update too. So another thing that was discussed was data. So people, I'm sure, are really interested in data. I do have some basic preliminary information around some of the heat events that we saw in the last few years. Generally speaking, it's nothing that's super surprising. Honestly, a lot of the things that we're seeing are people are going into ED care and going into hospital in the later evening hours. So from 2 to 8, generally speaking, those are the times that we're mostly seeing folks going into care for heat events, right? Interestingly enough, we're also seeing that the primary age demographic of folks that are going into care are men, and they're men in their 40s to 60s. So I can go into the breakdowns of the data if people would like, but that's kind of the general trends that we're seeing. And also a lot of the data for people who are experiencing homelessness is actually pretty small. So those are the big picture ones. So generally speaking, what we're seeing in all of Pierce County is that age demographic and that gender. But the data that we collect for people who are experiencing homelessness is actually very, very limited right now. It's like below 10, 15, right, a year. So when that number is so low, it's pretty hard for us to get that data, because it's almost like, you know, the gateway is not activated, and so it's not highlighted as an issue. But I know people here are really, really interested in getting more data, right? So that's something that I'm also trying to work with on, so we can get that information more quickly out and set up. And so it was also brought up that maybe we do a review every 6 months. So we review the last 6 months of an event, or any year for that matter, and I can come to this meeting space and share some of that information. So that's just another thing that we're working on a little bit, is just getting data to be a little bit more streamlined and data to be a little bit more helpful, since it's not super in the place that it needs to be right now. And Patricia, I see you have another hand up.
Yeah, I did a lot of theming with data about what brought people to homelessness. And when you're talking about that demographic with men, in like the background stories that I took, these were gentlemen that worked hot. A lot of them were high laborious jobs, right? Fishing vessels, trains, things that they just couldn't do. Their body just kind of marked out, but didn't have another career stage, you know, but also gained a lot of injuries or effects from that. And that's sort of a kind of pin I wanted to put in with people when discussing that age graphic when they go into emergency and where their trajectory is through life, right? So thank you for letting me share that. That's just something I wanted to point out.
Thanks, Patricia. And wanted to note that Monique asked for if you have a data you could share on that research. She'd be interested in seeing it.
Oh, is it the white paper question?
Yeah.
What's a white paper? I've never heard that term before.
So that's just typically that's a more academic analysis of the research into a question like that. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
I thought it was addressed to me. Also for the vets, there are white papers, Monique. So I'll try to get those for you.
Yeah. Awesome. Sorry, that's all I got. I'll be done talking now.
No problem. Appreciate you being here and sharing the information. That is an interesting demographic note about who is showing up in emergency rooms. So thank you for pulling that data together. All right, so let's, I'm looking at the clock and we're already at 10:24. I do want to still have a bit of a breakout conversation opportunity, and this one is likely to stir up even more conversation. So one of the questions that we've been talking about a little bit at the steering committee in particular is should we revisit the idea of holding one of these Friday meetings in person on a monthly basis? And I think there's a recognition that Zoom has worked really well over the last couple of years, but that and that it creates the opportunity for some people to attend that may not be able to come to an in-person meeting. But rather than just sticking with theoretical conversation, we thought we would spend a few minutes this morning in small groups talking about that, and so people can share notes. But before we do that, I wanted to ask a couple of poll questions. So I'm going to launch a poll. And the first question here, well, there's 3 questions in this poll. First, should we consider holding one in-person meeting each month? Second, if we do meet in person, would you be likely to attend? And then third, if we switch to a hybrid meeting once a month, meaning in person and with Zoom as a possibility, would you be more likely to attend in person or on Zoom? So this is not a scientific poll, it's just trying to get a temperature for where folks are at right now. And the last piece of context that I'll offer is that in my mind, there's no doubt that Zoom can be more convenient. I know I recognize I don't have travel time to a meeting and travel time back to my home office, but I'm also thinking strategically, are we losing opportunities to make an impact on this issue because we're not meeting in person? So let me give this just a few more seconds. I see we've had about 43, 44 people participate so far. Give it a few more seconds and then we'll show the results. All right, let me go ahead. We're at 46 out of 47 folks. This has been about 90 seconds, and I understand not everybody can participate. 53 of us, or 50 out of the 53 of us here have participated. So let me end the poll and share the results. So as you can see, about 48% of folks in the room said that they would consider, or they think we should consider holding one in-person meeting each month. 32% say they're not sure, and 10 of us in the room say, no, that won't work. If we met in person, would you be likely to attend? 58% of folks say yeah, 8 or 16% say no, and there's about 26% who are in the maybe category. And then if we decided to hold a hybrid meeting once a month on Zoom, the in-person numbers dropped down considerably. So 22% said that they would attend a hybrid meeting in person, 32% said they do Zoom, and then 46% agreed it would depend on their calendar. So thank you for participating. Jay, you have a hand up before we go to the breakout?
I was going to say that, part of the deterrent of a hybrid is having enough people to run the meeting. And doing that is having like 3 people who are willing to sit there and monitor the chat and who has hands and agree upon a system where we're taking like 1 question in the room and then 1 question from the chat and then 1 question to create an equal system. So a hybrid is possible, but we need enough people to do the tech work and the back behind if we're going to do that. And that's really what makes it difficult to imagine that. But hey, if we have volunteers, it makes it more likely.
Yeah, all of those details are what goes into my head when we think about running a hybrid meeting in particular. And so I see folks kind of offering some thoughts in the chat. Let's take that to small group conversations. So the same thing that we always do, we'll spend the next 10 minutes talking in small groups. And if one person in the room could take notes and share those in the chat when we get back, that would be fantastic. Let me set up the breakout rooms here. I'm just going to do 5 rooms, so it's relatively a small group of us here still now. And we will start the breakouts now. We'll come back here at 10:40. So again, the conversation's about should we have in-person meetings? And if we did, would you be able to attend? And any kinds of complications or concerns that would come up, please share those in your breakouts. Away we go. Welcome back, everyone. Hopefully, I know that conversation was shorter than usual, but I hope it was still a good conversation. And whoever you had set up to take notes, please paste those into the chat so Timothy can work his magic around this, what feels like a perennial question. Should we have more in-person meetings? So appreciate everybody participating in that, and hopefully it didn't feel like it was just a circular conversation. We'll take a look at what ideas people shared in combination with what we saw from the polling to talk about, what we might do going forward. Because in all honesty, before COVID, we met weekly at the Salvation Army building on South 12th and Union. We would have to make arrangements to either see if we could go back to that space or find another space for in-person meetings. So this is all very preliminary. Nothing's going to change next week. So thanks for participating in that conversation. Let's move on with our agenda. And I was going to go into a little more detailed update about the Pierce County Comprehensive Plan to End Homelessness and the conversation that took place last week at the advisory board meeting. I think what I'm going to do is I am going to paste the link to the web page for the comp plan into the chat. If you scroll down that page, and actually let me do a quick screen share so I can show you where to go to see this. If you're looking at the county's website and the comp plan to end homelessness, if you scroll down the page to the implementation board advisory meetings, you click on that, it will load a panel down below with all of the meeting packet information, including agendas, the notes from last Friday's meeting, the recording if you have an interest, and also the presentation that took place at that meeting. If you have an interest in the progress toward the comprehensive plan, please do take a look at that presentation. It goes into a lot of detail about where things currently stand in the priority areas that were laid out during the comprehensive plan process. And I don't think I feel like we have enough time to really go over slides on screen today, but I do urge you to go ahead and take a look at that presentation in particular if you have an interest. As it stands now, the advisory board continues to meet on a monthly basis on the first Friday of every month. I know Sally hung in there and commented at the end of the meeting this last week. And thank you for that, Sally. There was a lot of good conversation. And again, we'll do it all again next week or next month. This Friday, the members of the executive board for the advisory board, there's so many boards, will meet this afternoon from 2:30 to 3:30. So I'll participate in part of that on behalf of the coalition and share if there's any new updated information. One thing that I would share from the presentation that you can see on the website there is that one of the goals and timelines that's set up for the unified regional approach is that would be in place by the end of June this year. That seems rather optimistic, I should say. So some of the deadlines that are included there probably need to be re-examined. But you will see that there's information about upcoming funding opportunities, the sorts of things that Jeff shares with us every week, and where some of the remaining American Rescue Plan Act dollars are going to go. Those are the dollars that came from the federal government, again, to help respond to the COVID crisis, which supposedly is over on May 11th, but all right. Sorry that we don't have enough time to dig into that in great detail. Another topic that I wanted to talk to you all about is just real quick update on advocacy. So many of you, if you've been tracking and getting spammed by emails from me every week from the Housing Alliance, you've seen that the legislative session is marching toward the end of this session. That takes place next weekend on April 23rd is the end of the session. And we actually had a big cutoff date that took place this week on Wednesday. So first, let me share the good news. Earlier in the week, the legislature did pass, so it's gone through both chambers now, the House Bill 1260, which is a bill that will remove the requirement that people who are extremely poor and disabled have had to for decades repay the state for any dollars that they receive under the Age, Blind, and Disabled Cash Assistance Program once they get their Social Security benefits from the federal government. The bill passed this week to remove that repayment requirement. So it has taken years to get here, and that is a good thing to get done. So kudos to everyone who took part in action alerts related to that. It clearly sent a message to legislators that they should pass that legislation this year. At this point in the process, most of the action that remains in Olympia is going to be around budget, because everything has to wrap up by the end of next week. So one of the action alerts that we sent out this week that's seeing a lot of response, but we need even more from, especially from Pierce County, is around the Affordable Homes Act, which is House Bill 1628. It is a bill that will would impose an additional real estate excise tax on real estate sales that are $5 million and above. So essentially real estate sales for McMansions, apartments, things that investors are essentially selling over time. This additional real estate excise tax would be used specifically to fund the affordable or the housing trust fund. So it would go specifically to affordable housing, and also has a carve out for housing for those who have developmental disabilities. So it goes to a positive purpose. It is equitable because it focuses on those who have the most wealth in our community doing these real estate transactions. And the good news is, while we've been meeting this morning, the bill did move out of the House Finance Committee, but it still needs to move then over to the Senate and get approved by both the House and Senate to be part of the budget. So, and what I heard from Michelle Thomas, my colleague at the Housing Alliance this morning, is that it was a pretty close vote in the House Finance Committee. So I'm going to put in the chat the link to the action that we have and encourage y'all to participate in, I'm really not that good at multitasking this morning. Let's see what I can do here. Well, I'm eventually going to get there. Let's see if I already have it. But if you can take action this morning, right after this meeting is over, and oh, that's not it. Dang it.
While
Well,
you're finding that, Rob, I have a question.
Yeah.
If we've written in support of these things before, is it logical to send another one in at this point?
So the short answer is it never hurts to send more comments to your legislators. The one thing I will say is that this action on the Affordable Homes Act is we have had at least 3 different versions of the action on this. So if you haven't taken action yet this week in particular, it would be a good thing to do. So, and let's see if my computer is just not playing right. So I'm going to have to put it in the chat here as a little later. Yeah, and as Cynthia Stewart points out in the chat, yes, comment over and over again. You also have the ability to edit the letter that gets sent to your legislator. So, so that will be, that is helpful too if you customize it and do it that way. And I swear I will get it in the chat eventually, but I've got too many things going on at the moment. So that's that for advocacy updates. Any questions on advocacy as we move into the last week of the session? All right, I will put that in the chat. How about Jan? Any updates for Safe Streets, Safe Sites for All?
I will defer to Paula. We are moving along on many fronts, all having to do with safe sites for all. Paula Anderson, if you can hear me, did you have anything you want to announce on the network?
No, just to let you guys know that we are absolutely at the brink of being full, except for one small location, and we are working on getting that one filled. It has been an influx also here at New Hope. We had the most people here yesterday that we've had in a long time, which was 60 people, several new people. I think that has something to do with encampments being cleared on Levy Fife area. I anticipate we're going to start seeing more and more people coming in. So we're trying to brace ourselves for that because there's really no place for them to go in this area. I also want to give a big shout out to Verna and to Jan and to Becca, who I don't know if she's on this call or not. Their team came in, and tell me the name again, Jan, of the team that came.
Trauma Resilience Team, and we're
Yes.
volunteers with Medical Reserve Corps.
So they came down to talk to my team. One of my staff members who does take food out to some of the homeless, actually off of Valley Avenue in one of those encampments that's on DOT property, found a person that they had known for several years deceased in his makeshift trailer. And that was a very big shock to them. And so that was the fourth one this year that we have had of our community in the greater Puyallup area of people that we have known here at New Hope, fourth one this year. And so we decided to bring the team in, Jan's team in, and it just was really a good thing to do. We had a couple of people that were dealing with personal loss that were very, very happy to have that opportunity to grieve for loved ones that they had. One of my case managers had the 10th anniversary of her best friend who had passed away, which was the day after this counseling session. And it just was a good time to just be together. And I have a small team and we're close, but again, having a guided grief session, counseling, being able to get some opportunity to talk about how to just deal with that was really cathartic, if you will, and gave us some tools to work with. So I encourage that for any of your team members. And again, they also have some other counseling that they can do, some other training they can do, and it's free. I tried to give them a stipend. They said no. When I sent an email to Verna, she said absolutely not, and then said, hey, we have this other stuff too. So utilize them, and I'll tell you what, that was really, really fantastic. So I encourage anybody in this situation that deals with secondary trauma, especially, or to give them a try. They were wonderful. Thank you, Jan. Thank you, Verna.
And thank you for sharing that, Paula. Let's shift over to any committee updates. Rosemary, did you want to share about governance meeting next week?
Yes, I would just like to announce 2 meetings that are coming up. The conversation we had today about how the coalition meets is something that we might consider in the governance work group that we are reorganizing. We dealt with it for a while and took a kind of longish break during this legislative session, but we'll be meeting from 11 to 12 on the 24th of this month. And that's not necessarily a regular time. So if you're interested in questions of how we could work together better, or what kinds of structures might help us to be more effective in our work, that would be good to check the coalition homepage for the time of the meeting and just zoom in with us. But next week, we'll also have the Race and Equity Committee meeting from 3 to 4 on Thursday, April 20th. And just as a save the date, I put in the chat the upcoming event that we are co-sponsoring with the League of Women Voters and the A. Philip Randolph Institute and Shiloh Baptist Church, a showing of A Reckoning in Boston. That will be an on-demand screening opportunity, and that deals with racial discrimination and gentrification in the city of Boston and has implications for our own stories in Tacoma. And then we'll have free streaming of that from May 13, 14, and 15, followed by a community opportunity to discuss the film and its implications on Thursday, May 18. So there'll be more information coming out soon, but if you're available then, I know it conflicts with some other things in the community, and that's often the way it goes, but those are the two groups. And we do welcome more people to the Race and Equity Committee to plan other ways that we can be more inclusive and more diverse in our outreach to all the folks who should be with us.
Thank you, Rosemary. And we have 4 minutes left, and I'd like to open the floor for any kind of good trouble announcements folks have before we wrap up today's meeting. Maybe we've made enough good trouble today. Any success stories that folks would like to share? Courtney, go ahead.
Sorry, it took me a second. I wanted to let people know that the Lived Experience Coalition has had an opportunity to have a meeting with the mayor of Gig Harbor. It was a lovely meeting. And we're planning an additional one, and Bob and the Gig Harbor Key Peninsula Network was mentioned, and she said, I just had a meeting with them yesterday. They put on an event. She said great things about that. And so I just wanted to express that the mayor of Gig Harbor is, I think, an ally, and it's really exciting to feel that confirmation and not just hear that. So yeah, that's about it.
That is positive. And Todd, did you want to say something? Yeah, go ahead, Mark, while Todd's figuring out his mic.
Yeah, no problem. So on our end, with Miracle Messages, the organization that I'm involved with, we assisted an unhoused woman who get back in touch with her cousin. She'd been longing to reconnect with her cousin, hadn't seen him since the late 70s. It was like a brother to him. They were raised together, and both of them ended up in tears just through the, they were so excited. He ended up flying her up to Sacramento, where he lives, for Easter, and and she's also part of our guaranteed basic income program, Miracle Money. And then she's also has a miracle friend, somebody she's been a volunteer she's been talking to for once a week for like 6 months. So I know it doesn't specifically pertain to Tacoma Pierce County, but those, are things we can be doing here in Pierce County as well.
Great. And then Jan, I see you have your hand up. Why don't you close us out?
Yes, I want to invite everybody to our April 26th breakfast at Clover Park Tech. You would go to lossofpierce.org, and then it will take you to a link, and we will be able to introduce you to our new executive director, as well as tell you about our hygiene center, which, oh my gosh, we're finally got permits. It was a long road, but we'll be breaking ground. Thank you for clapping. So come on over and have breakfast, or a couple of months from now, you can come over and take a shower. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, everyone. We filled the whole 2 hours. Look at, we did it again. So it's great to see everybody. I hope everybody has a safe weekend. Hopefully enjoy a little bit of the sunshine today before the rain returns. And we look forward to seeing everybody back here again next Friday. If you have an interest in helping plan next week's meeting, we're going to have a very abbreviated planning meeting this morning. We only got about 10 minutes before this Zoom is going to be used by somebody else. So thank you, everyone, and we'll see you all next week.